Welcome back to another edition of the Fanatics Hockey Show. I am James Lynch. Great having my next guest back here, Peter Klein. You see him all over Sportsnet. He's doing a great job covering the Calgary Flames. Got a lot of other stuff going on. Peter, how are you? You were just telling me it's actually pretty warm over there in Calgary, or warmer than usual this time of year.
Yeah, seeing all the different things on social media about the winter apocalypse that's hitting everywhere else, but here we're blessed with Chinooks sometimes. So we just finished second winter. That seems to have wrapped up, and we're into our second pre-spring of the calendar. It's a different weather out here in Calgary.
Yes, and speaking of brighter horizons, I'm sure there's a bit of relief on the Calgary Flames end, making that trade last week. Of course, I'll show it to you on the screen here. Rasmus Andersson going to the Las Vegas Golden Knights. We kind of heard this, like, even in the offseason, this was a possibility, and it seemed like the type of move that Vegas would make. I mean, there's a lot of history there, obviously acquiring Noah Hannafin, and, you know, just the fact that Vegas does seem to take big swings throughout the year. It finally happens. What took so long? Why? I guess that's kind of where I want to start here, because I figured this was something that probably could have happened, I think, earlier in the season.
Yeah, I was saying the entire offseason, it's going to happen. Like, don't worry, but it might even happen at the draft. Well, you know what? Okay, by July 1st. Okay, well, by the time training camp starts, okay, well, he's not going to start the season as a... Okay, so yes, no, I was also one who was thinking that this probably took a little bit longer than it should have. And I think the main reason is the contract situation with him. Because he was going into this as an unrestricted free agent, I think that there was maybe a hope that maybe something a little bit longer term could get done, and with whatever team he was going to. And I do also think that the the nightmares of some Flames fans was true, in that the Flames, I think, were also kind of contemplating keeping him around as well. So yeah. I do think there was a few things going on with that. I do think that the time actually ended up helping Calgary on this, because you were able to drum up a little bit more interest from a Boston. The Kings were apparently involved in it as well. But ultimately, Vegas was the team that could give up what they gave up for just a rental. You know, like Boston, they're... having a better season for sure, but I don't think it's Stanley Cup or bust this season out there, where Vegas is kind of perpetually in that. So even if this does just end up being a rental, which none of us actually think it's going to be, but Vegas can still, if that is what they gave up for the next 6 months of Rasmus Andersson, and he goes off and signs with whoever, they're fine with that, where other teams couldn't be. So it took a little bit longer than we thought, but I think that actually ended up benefiting the Calgary Flames a little bit.
Yeah, the return's great. Zach Whitecloud, you get him sort of, in the prime of his career right now. You get a prospect here. I'm not too familiar with Weeby. I don't know if that's how you say it. It kind of looks that way. And then the two picks, obviously a first and a second. So we know defenseman, obviously a premium when it comes to, especially veteran defensemen like Andersson, who himself is in the prime of his career. So Vegas taking that risk about maybe not re-signing him or whatever. Seems like a good fit there. Again, I talked about the past relationship there with Calgary already, making moves here. Are you happy with the return? Because I think, again, you're giving up a guy that, I don't think was part of the future plans of Calgary. I think there's a lot of Flames fans that are relieved they didn't re-sign him, but you must be pretty happy with what they got back.
I am, yeah. I do think it will look a little less than if he signs an extension with Vegas, because everyone is assuming that that's what's going to happen. But you can't just tell Vegas to give you more things, because, look, we know when they're not negotiating against anyone else, right? So for the situation that they're in, I think they got a really good return for it. Weeb is a large human being, and playing in college right now doesn't really seem as the highest of prospects. Obviously, the big parts of this are the draft picks, the first round pick in 27, and that second round pick turns into a first if Vegas wins the Stanley Cup this year, which means Calgary could control Vegas's draft for the next 3 years. So
yeah, that's true. I didn't think of that. That's crazy.
Get used to learning the draft prospects between 29 and 32. But yeah, those are kind of the big ones. And then Whitecloud, he's a solid defenseman. He has been on Calgary's top pair for the first few games since he has come here. I do think that there is a lot of people who are kind of anticipating that he should rent, not buy, in the Calgary area. He is a right shot defenseman who is the same age as Rasmus Andersson. Not as good, obviously, but the Flames are very aware of what teams need 29-year-old right shot defensemen. So I think that he will be flipped at some point, if not this year. I don't think he's playing the entirety of that contract with the Flames. They have Zane Parekh, who is finishing up his conditioning stint in the American Hockey League right now, who's a right shot. Hunter Bustevich has impressed so far as a right shot. So at some point, while Whitecloud is solid, I think A, he deserves to be on a team that is competitive, and B, for what the Flames are looking for, this is no knock on him at all. He's just kind of in the way.
With this move, and again, there was, I mean, sure, you guys were pulling your hair out when you heard that there was maybe talk of like keeping him, when it's pretty obvious that this is not a, it's not a playoff team potentially, and then also not a team that's going to contend for a Stanley Cup. So this was sort of a big move, I think, because it maybe signals that Calgary is willing to sell a bit more. Do you think this will be a domino effect where we will see more trades from Calgary, or do you think they're still in this sort of retool mindset, which is, I think, what came out maybe a couple months ago, saying we're not rebuilding, we're going to like retool. That was kind of my understanding. Is that changed at all with this trade?
I think that this really does signify that they are going in that direction, because Rasmus Andersson is a player that you win with, right? Like he is hard-nosed, right shot defenseman. He's good at getting the puck out of his own end. He's got a shot that could take down a building. Like he checks a lot of boxes for what you would want from a winning hockey player. And so if they would have kept him around, then obviously that they're just looking at the retool direction. But when you make this trade, you are kind of signifying, not just to the fan base, but also to the guys in the room, that we are going in a younger direction. So yes, I think that there is quite a bit of fire to the smoke around some Blake Coleman rumors.
Yeah, he's one,
along with those with Nazem Kadri as well. There are trade protections on both players. With Kadri, that has been limited. That they kind of brought that back a little bit here. So I think there are more moves to be made. And yes, I do think that this finally signifies that there is a younger direction coming here in Calgary.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, again, I think a lot of fans know the way to, become a contender is to do that proper rebuild. We're seeing, we just saw San Jose last night absolutely destroy Vancouver. They're a team that did a proper rebuild. Buffalo now seems to be finally breaking through with their win streak. They just smoked the Leafs last night. By the way, someone had like a meme this morning of like Canucks fans, it was like, the meme of the girl that's like on the swing set and there's a fire behind her. It was like Canucks fans watching the Maple Leafs right now, because it's like they're not really doing a rebuild. Canucks are, at least the Canucks are a little bit further ahead here. Yeah. I don't know if the Leafs will get it done. Got to get Stephen Ellis back on the show to talk about that. But yeah, I'm just looking at the Flames right now. Like, it's like, obviously Huberdeau's probably not going to get traded, just because I don't think a team's going to eat that contract unless there was some retention. You got Kadri, obviously. I could see that getting moved just because you can't replace that grittiness, the experience, all that stuff. Anyone else on this list? We mentioned Blake Coleman. A lot of these guys are under the age limit. Backlund, I think, is kind of like, I'm going to stay here forever. Is there anyone else on here you could see getting? What about Mackenzie Weegar? He's another name I thought maybe could get moved.
Yeah, if he gets moved, then I think I'm officially cursed, because the last two guys who I've said, that guy could be a future captain for the Flames, get traded with Matthew Tkachuk and Rasmus Andersson. Weegar is the next one that I would say that about. When they locked him up, like that felt like he is kind of our cornerstone defenseman piece. And he's having a bit of a rough year out here as well. And then obviously there's a lot of changes happening. He's paired with a younger defenseman now in Jan Kuznetsov. I'm not saying that that's the reason for it. Kuznetsov's been great, but it has been a bit of a down year for Weegar. So he's one of those guys where when it's not going well, you don't want to trade him at the time that his value is lowest. But then when it is going well, you're not going to trade him. He's a cornerstone of the franchise. So I don't see that being a move that they make. Certainly not now. I think if we get on further down the line and maybe some more prospects have developed in ways that he becomes expendable, then for sure. But for right now, I don't think that's the case. I think the attention would be probably on the two guys that they got from Philadelphia last year with Frost and Farabee. Frost has shown more signs out here that talented player that everyone sees can be there a little bit more consistently than he did in Philadelphia, but he is also just a touch older than I think some people around here would like him to be. And Farabee, we talked about him on 960 out here yesterday. Like, he has all of the skill set, like all of the pieces to the puzzle are there. They're just never combined at the same time. And it can get a little bit frustrating, but you can also convince yourself or a contending team can convince themselves like, hey, we can fix this guy. We can get the most out of him. Like, yeah, no, he didn't thrive in Philadelphia and Calgary, but we, Team X, we can get the most out of him. So those would be probably the two other ones to maybe keep an eye on, but those would be not as realistic as probably a Kadri and a Coleman would be.
And I think sort of what a lot of fans want when it comes to rebuild, correct me if I'm wrong and maybe you feel differently, but I think, sort of the idea would be, you obviously don't want just a young team. You don't want a team that's too inexperienced where you're killing their development. I think what a lot of people want is you get those veterans in as free agents, the ones that just end up there that, are, like I'm trying to think of like an example, like a Jason Zucker in Buffalo is like an example who's like, a little bit older, but someone that, they brought in, seems like it's been a good fit, good leadership in the room. But you don't sign those guys to long-term contracts, right? Like you bring them in as like a 1-2 year deal to help the players go on. And I think anyone over the age of 25, I would think is someone like you mentioned, Frost being 26. Like I could see those names being attractive to other teams and recoup those assets for picks. I think that's how people like doing the rebuild. Am I right there on that?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That is kind of what everyone is looking for, and I agree with you. You need some adults in the room. It can't just be a team that's the kids' table. So you do need some of that. But with like the guys who would be that right now, like Kadri has been awesome with the kids. He was with Zeri and Pospisil a couple of years ago and let both of those guys thrive. I think he's been really important for the development of Matt Vagridden, the 19-year-old who's been getting some time with the Flames this season as well. But at the same time, he is someone who is going to get you a pretty good return. And if you're just looking for a mentor, like you said, you can sign that for 1 year and $2.5 million on July 27th. You can find that. They have Ryan Lomberg around already. He is someone who can kind of help out. He's been to a Stanley Cup, won it. He has been really good in that kind of mentorship role as well. So yes, like you can find those guys if teams are willing to give you appropriate value for your veterans. That I think at this point, with how good the Flames have been at drafting the last couple of years as well, it makes more sense to get a few more bullets in the chamber for you, or a few more lottery tickets, whatever metaphor you want to throw out there.
So I kind of brushed over it, but I'm just curious your thoughts. Like this Huberdeau thing, is he here forever? Like you don't think that's a contract that can be moved? Because I'm sure if you are rebuilding, you probably don't need him part of that rebuild.
Right. The Flames are fortunate right now that salary cap space is not really something they're worried about. So his $10.5 million can just sit there and do its thing. There was a point last year where it looked like he might be able to play his way into a spot where if the Flames retained half, they could get something for him instead of having to attach a draft pick to kind of get him out of the way. So I don't think there is going to be a world where he plays back into a spot where a team thinks $10.5 million is all right to take on. And the contract is it's too long for me from a Flame standpoint to be retaining salary on it, because by the time that you want to be good again, you don't necessarily want to be paying someone to not be on your hockey team. And then if at that point you need to attach a pick to get him out, like they did with Monahan when they were signing Kadri, which didn't work, but they still signed him. So maybe you do that then. But I do not see a world where Huberdeau is in a position where the Flames could move him at any point here in the next couple of years.
Yeah, in Vancouver, we're kind of dealing with this with Pettersson. Like, I think Pettersson's not playing bad. He's not his old self, but same sort of thing, long contract. Are you going to be this rebuild? Is he even good for the locker room at this point? There's been some questions about that, about his work ethic and all that. So I know there's been some talk about teams moving, but Canucks fans at this point, I think, are just like, trade him. Whoever takes him, as long as you can get off the contract, because I think that's the big thing right now, is that they want salary retention. I'm like, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but like they're still paying Oliver Ekman-Larsson until my kids are going to be going to college. Like that's how long it's been that contract is going on. Easily the worst trade in Canucks history. So I don't think they're interested in doing that. So we'll see how that goes. But it just, every time I see Huberdeau, I think about the Pettersson situation here in Vancouver, although a little bit better. Goaltending, curious about that. I haven't been paying attention too much. How have the Wolf and Cooley tandem been working out so far? Because I remember at one point Wolf was struggling a little bit, but it looked like he found his game. What's sort of the latest on that?
Yeah, he's been playing great. His play is not going to match what the numbers are. Like he doesn't have a good team in front of him. So there are going to be nights where you look at the Flames score and they'll lose 4-2, and you'll see that Wolf gave up the 4. It's like, man, what's going on with this guy? And then you look deeper and it's like 41 shots, and a bunch of them are high quality. Like he is doing everything he can. Goaltending is not a problem in Calgary. Cooley has been at times probably the Flames' best, but between the two of them, he has played very, very effectively for Calgary. And the thing that I think they're going to have to monitor, because again, it's clear what direction this season is going, and it is not heading toward a playoff spot or anything like that. But Wolf still has played the fourth most games in the NHL and the second most minutes in the league this season. That's too much to be putting on your young goaltender. And not to dig at old wounds or anything, but we kind of on the radio yesterday talked about Demko as potentially a cautionary tale there, where you don't want to.
You can talk away. That's all everyone's talking about here, is the fact that might go down as the worst, one of the worst, probably the worst move that the Alvin Rutherford era has made, is re-signing him when you didn't need to. Like if they didn't re-sign him and he would have just went this year as a UFA, what's he getting on the market? Who's dying to get his services when he's not healthy? It's just it's a total disaster. So yeah, talk away, because we're already going right through the motions right now. That's all everyone's talking about here, is how bad that Demko contract is.
Yeah, and it's like it's frustrating, because if you could just video game and turn injuries off, he's one of the best goalies in the world. But you can't do that with human beings. And the concern out here is riding Dustin Wolf into the ground in a season that doesn't mean anything. Like, Dustin Wolf shouldn't be the second in the league in minutes for goalies on a team that is 29th in the NHL. I think there is going to be a bit more of a split of the workload now that the coaching staff really does have a confidence in Cooley, and now that it does seem like the playoffs are not something that they're necessarily striving for out here. But no, goaltending has been fine. Wolf has been very, very good. Cooley has been there to match it as well. It's just they lose a lot of 2-1 hockey games.
Yeah, they do. Kind of looking at the standings right now. We do see, I was like you looking at the actual point totals here for the conference. So Calgary currently in 14th in the Western Conference. Look at that. I mean, listen, I got to tell you, if I got to thank the Canucks for hiring Adam Foote, because he's doing a great job of making sure Vancouver finally gets the first overall pick, because they've never had it in their franchise history. So things are looking good. But you and St. Louis, it's sort of a race to see. I mean, I'm looking in the East, like 50 points for the Rangers. I guess not a huge difference between Calgary and St. Louis, but it's very realistic, I think, that Calgary or St. Louis could be in that top three. I actually don't envy your position. Like, I don't think you're in the worst position ever, because we don't know what's going to be happening with Gavin McKenna. Like, is he going to go first overall? Is the Canucks going to take Steinberg? Like, that's the big question there. Do you think Calgary's going to end up bottom three, or do you think that, they have enough life here? I guess part of it too would matter if they can trade some guys out, and then that would obviously make things worse.
Yeah, like it's not like Kadri and Coleman are getting in the way of the tank anyway. But no, I do think that they will be bad. Now, like you said, that the Canucks are putting on a show right now, a clinic, masterclass of how to completely bottom out an NHL team. That has been quite the run. And much like Vancouver, the Flames haven't had that first overall pick either. The highest pick they've had was Sam Bennett at 4. And that's worked out very well.
I didn't even think of that. Why did they? Yeah, see, and this is something we've talked about before, of why I don't like Edmonton. They've had how many first overall picks? I think 4, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't Taylor Hall, Nugent Hopkins, Nail Yakupov, right? McDavid, obviously. That's 4 right there, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, no, we're aware. It is like that. There should be rules that you can't be picking that high, that often.
Like all the time. It happened like too frequently. That, and again, there's a variety of other reasons, but that's that. And listen, I've been honest about it on the show. I'm not an Oilers fan by any means, partly because of that. Like, how do you get so many picks? It's crazy. So anyway.
Yeah, and the arrogance that comes with, we just did it the right way. It's like, man, I remember when Sam Gagner and Cogliano were going to be the pillars of the franchise out there, and then just they couldn't get it right for another decade. But no, like this is not a good team. Like the Flames, watching the Ducks the other night, Calgary was out shooting Anaheim 21-4, and the game was tied. Like they have to work very hard to create their goals right now. So I think they're going to bottom out. Like you said, I don't know if it is as imperative to get the number 1 overall pick as it maybe seemed coming into this season, because Stenberg's there, Verhoff as well. I think fans out here would certainly prefer the 2 forwards rather than another defenseman, because the forward piece seems to be the one that is kind of the missing link out here right now. And I do, depending on what moves each team makes, I do think McKenna would actually solve a few problems. Like I think if you were able to get one of those 2 guys with Calgary, I don't think that it's going to be another 5 years of toiling around in the bottom. I think because they have some younger pieces like a Sharon Govich and a Coronado, you have Zeri there as well. And then who knows what else is going to be around, but there is a bit of a younger nucleus already of kind of the foundational pieces, but not the franchise cornerstone thing. If you get that one, I think it's kind of off to the races. And I would be curious to see McKenna, who does seem to be a bit more of the playmaker if he could maybe, if Pettersson was still there, unlock something out in Vancouver. So not to put too much pressure on the 18-year-old to just solve the fortunes of two middling franchises, but I do think that he is still good enough that it does maybe not immediately rocket you back up into contention. There's still a little bit more pain there to go, but I think that does help turn things around pretty quickly.
Yeah, I have this weird feeling that you guys are going to end up getting McKenna, and I wouldn't mind that because my thing with McKenna is I just want him to go to a Canadian team. I just think when you have a high draft pick like that, same thing with Verhoff, it would be nice to see them go to like a Canadian team and there's like kind of a rally around that, because I feel like a lot of these Canadian teams, like you don't see, especially Vancouver, like we've had a lot of Americans, a lot of Swedes. I just think it would be nice to have like, like they thought they had that years ago in Jake Virtanen, and that was an absolute disaster. But like, it would be nice to see them get someone, because I really do feel like if the Canucks drafted McKenna, people would be more into it. They'd want to go to the games. Nothing against Stenberg. I think he's amazing, and he probably is the better player, but I just want something different. It's only been, like, we got Lekkerimäki, Wielander. Like, these are all Swedes. It would be nice to just diversify the portfolio, so to speak. And like I said, if the Canucks don't end up getting McKenna, I would love to see Calgary get him, because I just want, like, a Canadian, like with McDavid in some ways. Like, it's great that as much as I don't like the Oilers, at least he's with Edmonton, like it's kind of one of those things where at least it's with the Canadian team and not like some random, like Bedard being with Chicago is still something that does not sit well with me at all. Yes. Especially the fact that he grew up like a Canucks fan and like all the rivalry with Chicago, and now he's like, helping them out. But anyways, that's a topic for another day. So we'll see how it pans out. But again, I think either anyone in that, whoever ends up getting in the top three, you're going to end up getting like a good player, not like a franchise altering player necessarily, but a strong player at the very least. Because I think there was some talk about McKenna being that like McDavid type. Obviously, he broke a lot of records in the WHL, but we just haven't seen that this year. And part of that could just be the new environment with NCAA. Although he has been heating up lately. I don't know if he's been keeping an eye on the stats. He's been playing quite well. So
we've been paying attention out here. Yes, the McKenna watch has been on for a bit. And like just to your note of wanting him in a Canadian market, like he has said before, like he grew up appreciating the Calgary Flames and a fan of the Flames. There's pictures of him in Flames gear as a kid. So we could have our John Tavares pajamas moment out here if that actually ends up being the case. And his draft stock, it bugs me, and I understand why it's happening. I understand all the reasons why it's happening. But if he had just stayed in the WHL, he'd have 100 points by now. Medicine Hat would still be in first place, and they would just be cruising, and we'd be talking about how great this kid is. But because he decided to challenge himself, dared to be great, and went to do a different challenge in a new country, going to school, playing against older guys in a different schedule than you're used to, because he's doing all of that now, it's getting a knock on him a little bit, where if he just would have kept to the easier path, we wouldn't have known. So that kind of thing bugs me a little bit, but I do understand it entirely. But I'm holding on to all my Gavin McKenna stock. I'll say that.
Yeah, no, like I said, and I hope you guys get him if we don't end up. But I've had a lot of discussions with Canucks fans here. A lot of them are like, take Stenberg, he's better. But I don't know. I want that Canadian player here. Canucks have never really had like a Canadian, like maybe like, and even Trevor Linden, if you look like way back in the day, like he was a high draft pick, but not really known as like he was like a heart and soul guy. But they haven't really had that since then. It's been the Sedin twins, and again, super grateful for them. Marcus Naslund, you name it. There've been a lot of good players that have come through Vancouver. Quinn Hughes, American, but you know what I mean. Like it would be nice to have that Canadian player, and I just know like the fan base here would like eat up a McKenna jersey and all that. So kind of hoping that'll take place. Honestly, there's part of me too, I hate to say it, just the Canucks luck, because they've had the worst luck I think out of most franchises. Part of me thinks they're not even going to get the first pick. They'll end up being the worst team, and then somehow the lottery ball will give them, like Nashville will be first or something silly like that. You know what I mean? Like I could totally see that happening. So
that seems to be how it goes.
Yeah, dating back to when they came in the league, right? Buffalo got first pick. They got was it Perreault and or not Perreault? Who got drafted by Buffalo? Their first ever pick. I can't remember. It was whatever. It ended up being like a franchise player, and the Canucks got Dale Talent. So just goes to show where they're at as well. Do you see, kind of just keeping an eye on the Western Conference, do you see much movement here? Like the Winnipeg is one that still really surprises me a lot, just for the simple fact that like, yeah, they lost Ehlers, but like, how could they be this bad? I know they won last night, but I look at that away record, something's going on the road, 9-14-2, they're 12-10 at home, but any sort of surprises for you this year as far as the Western Conference goes?
Yeah, the Winnipeg one certainly is that. I know Hellebuck was hurt for a bit, but he came back and that solved nothing. So that has surprised me quite a bit. San Jose still being in the mix did surprise me. I thought that they were still probably a year and an off season away from making this sort of a push. And it seems like that's legit. And they just made the trade with Vancouver with Kiefer Sherwood. So
Yeah,
they're
huge
going
move.
for it. And I appreciate that they have a young player. They're going to reward this young roster and maybe make a bit of a move. I guess the other one that's caught my attention negatively would be the LA Kings. We both know the Kuzmenko story where
Yes,
he
for
went
sure.
in. They acquired him at the deadline, and he turned them into one of the best offensive teams in the NHL for that stretch. It's why I picked them against the Edmonton Oilers in the first round of that series. Is they were playing really good hockey at that point. And I think, again, we did this yesterday, 17 points in 22 games, I think it was, with the Kings last year post trade deadline, and he's at 20 points in 48 games with them this season. Like it's fallen off, and they're in a spot where it might make more sense to be in a bit more of a sell mode, but they're not going to do that in the last dance season for Anze Kopitar. So they're in a tricky spot out there, and I didn't think they would be in this spot at all. I really did not think that Anaheim or San Jose would be ahead of them right now in the Pacific.
I don't know if you've heard this or you guys have discussed it. You probably wouldn't because it's Calgary, but like there's been some talk about maybe Pettersson going to LA because it makes sense if Kopitar's not coming back. Obviously, he's retiring. You've got, can they unleash the old Pettersson in LA? And they'd have the assets to do it. They've got picks, they've got prospects. I kind of hope that's the move that they make because I just think for the Canucks doing the rebuild, like you need to get rid of some of these bigger contracts. Like a lot of people are kind of like, okay, Pettersson, Besser, guys that just aren't working out here. You could probably go to a different team and have greater pastures, but it's not going to happen here, right? Like
Right.
you know, some of these guys. So I do wonder if there's a fit there with LA. I also heard they might be interested in Evander Kane. Did you hear that the Canucks tried to trade Evander Kane back to Edmonton?
Really?
Yes.
Oh man, I did not hear that.
Our bad. Yeah. Kane, listen, I think, I think, to be honest, when they got Kane, I was kind of like, great. Like, cause obviously they had locker room issues last year. We know that Kane's had some issues, to put it mildly outside of there. But when he was with Edmonton, it seemed like things were working, things were going well. I think people made too much of Kane coming here, but him not working out doesn't really surprise me. I think he needs to be with talented players, and they just don't have that here in Vancouver. I could see a team, because apparently Ken Holland inquired about Kane, obviously, because he brought him to Edmonton the first time,
Right.
so that might be a fit there too. So, it'll be interesting. I'm not that surprised by LA because I just think those signings that they made with Cody Ceci and Dumoulin were going to bite them. I think they overpaid for both those guys. They should have just given that money to was it Gavrikov? Who's the guy that went to New York?
Gavrikov,
Gavrikov, yeah. I don't know why they just didn't pay up for him and keep him around. So not super shocked by LA, but yeah, you bring up a good point. Like maybe they go into selling mode, but it's Ken Holland, right? Like I think it's his first year. I think he's gonna try and like make a big swing or something. So I could see that happening. And Seattle's a weird one for me because they did look good earlier in the year. Shane Wright's name's out there now. Like I wonder, that's when I heard that I was like, Canucks, get on the phone. Like that fits your profile of a younger guy. Yeah. So I don't know. Some of these teams I'm curious about. Nashville still being, I don't know why Nashville, it's like Nashville's like the, person who's got like a drinking problem but can't acknowledge it. That's what they were like. Why are they not selling? Like it makes no sense to me that they're still like, I know Stamkos is like, I'm happy here, all that, but like, we're like the more you keep in this mode, the more you're stuck in this purgatory of like we're maybe a playoff team or maybe not. You should start the rebuild sooner rather than later. And Chicago's, they were hot for a bit. I don't know what's going on in Chicago actually. Are they kind of turning into the Buffalo of the West? Like I figured by now they would maybe be a playoff team. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought that they would, just timeline wise. I was surprised they were so quiet in the offseason. I thought they would be really aggressive in the Besser Marner markets. Now the Marner one, it kind of was out of their hands, but they had a ton of cap space to work with. I thought they'd try to overpay for a couple of guys to come in and bring Connor Bedard some help. I still think they maybe should try to do that. You look at that team and it doesn't look like a playoff roster at this point, except Connor Bedard has started to turn into the Connor Bedard that we all thought he could be. So I'm a little surprised at how inactive they have been, and patience probably is the better play there, but that's a lot of patience that they have. And the one you brought up there, Seattle, I think they're really interesting at this deadline because it is a bit of a seller's market right now. When you look at what could be available, there's obviously some higher end ones. When you're looking at salary cap hits like Pettersson, obviously Panarin as well, but Seattle has a few that could be in kind of that more value market if they wanted to move on from some of those unrestricted free agents, guys like the Schwartzes and the Everleys and all of that, and actually build this organization out properly. That they took the run at being the Vegas again. It didn't work. I know they are close to a playoff spot now, but they could really set themselves up well to actually have an actual farm system and everything if they were to actually go the rebuild direction. So I think they should still be sellers here, but I also understand that's a very difficult thing to sell to your market when you are competing for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where Seattle goes in terms of like what their direction is, because obviously they have the new GM now with Botterill, right? So things are a bit different. I mean, Ron Francis, he was just like, he almost did the opposite of what McCrimmon did, which is just like, it was almost like he was too passive. Like, and then some of the signings were just bad. Like, what was it? Chandler Steve? No, who's the? They brought a couple guys over.
Yeah, Stevenson and Montour.
Yes,
they brought in
Stevenson and Montour. Yeah, which kind of overpaid for those guys, and I don't think the contracts really fit what they needed to do. They also didn't they have more who's the guy for Boston right now? Is it Geeky, who they kind of just let go, and he's been lighting it up for the Bruins. That's another one where it's like, why didn't you keep him around? Like, I don't get that one. Look, he's lighting it up right now for Boston. He's only at a 5.5 hit. So
yeah, they made a lot of moves that were moves that you make when you are looking for that final piece to get across the championship line, not the hey, we made the playoffs once, let's try that again. I think they weren't quite as far along in their development as they needed to be.
Yeah, totally agree. Just quickly, before we get out of here, the Oilers, I mean, the last time we talked, they were in sort of this, is this really going to be a year they mess things up? But they've gone on quite the run since then. They obviously made the goalie swap as well, which, to be honest, it pains me to say this, but I think it's kind of worked out good for both teams. Like, Stuart Skinner's played quite well for Pittsburgh. I think Jari's been okay. I still have questions about, what his ceiling is. I don't think we'll ever get back to the old Jari. I think for the Oilers, it's about kind of adding, I think they need a third line center. And I kind of look at, Vancouver's going to have to unload some of their centers with the fact that, they got Bluger back, Cheadle's back. Like, I think, Bluger especially, I think, is someone that will most likely get dealt here. What are some needs you see for the Oilers on your end? Because I do think it's that bottom six that they need to just be producing more for them. They can't just rely on Draisaitl and McDavid.
Yeah, like obviously those guys are the headliners, but when they were, I know they've been to back-to-back Stanley Cups, but this last one, it didn't feel overly competitive. The one that was obviously the one that went to a seventh game when they made that run to try to come from 3-0 down. And that's when they were getting a little bit more production from that bottom six. And obviously you have two gigantic contracts at the top, but McDavid is wildly underpaid, so that shouldn't be holding you back. But you do still have to nibble at the margins, and it's just those moves that they've tried haven't worked, right? Like Mangiapane is already on the trading block. The Frederick contract looked bad from day one and has continued to be bad ever since, and they only have 8 more years on that, so I'm sure that's going to be great. But yeah, they need something to click in that bottom six. They are perpetually in need of another defenseman. The Nurse thing isn't getting better. I know they've had guys exchange hat tricks recently with Bouchard and with Ekholm, but they need a little bit more reliability on that back end as well. So yeah, it's the depth pieces that they need to get figured out. The goaltending is going to be what it is. Like, I don't think they're going to give a Godfather offer to Minnesota for Wallstedt or anything like that. So they're just going to have to make it work with Jari the way they've had to with Skinner before. And the way you do that is have a productive bottom six that has the puck in the other end more often than not, and have a defensive group that can actually get the puck out of your own end when they need to.
I don't agree with him too often, but Jim Matheson actually had a good tweet. He mentioned Oilers maybe looking at Boone Jenner. I think he's a UFA for Columbus. That to me would be like a good third option for them. In terms of like getting someone that there is that bit of upside. Because Roslovic, I thought that was a good signing for them, but I think he's like playing wing now. Like, he's not really a center, right? Like not anymore. So I do wonder if they make some moves. And I think honestly with the Oilers, like, you've got this window with McDavid. He's only here for a couple more years. Go all out, get right. I know their cupboard's pretty bare as it is. Like, I'm gonna even look at their picks right now. Like, I know it's not, great, but you've got McDavid for 3 more years at this great price. What are their picks even? No first this year. They've still got a second this year and a third. They still got their picks for next year. Like, go for broke. Get whatever you can. Go on this run. Try and make it happen. And if it doesn't, that's where you're going to have to rebuild, I think, come 3 years if it's not panning out. Because it's just, I think we've seen the recipe out there. Like, Florida's a bit of a different situation because people look at them and say, well, they didn't really draft. It was all trades. But like the Tkachuk trade, this better than anyone. Like, that was kind of like a forced hand thing. Like, that just doesn't happen too often. I think teams that are successful, like Colorado, I always bring up the Colorado example, like they've drafted well. Like they made that decision years ago. I always bring up the story about they realized that their core guys that they had years ago with like Duchesne and all them wasn't working. So they had to make some drastic moves and kind of had a couple tough years, and then they made it through. I think you see these contenders like your Carolinas, Tampa Bays, all that, they've had to go through those growing pains. I think with Edmonton, they're in the opposite spot, go for broke now. And then after that, then you rebuild, right? I think that's fair.
Like Florida, the draft and develop thing, it was just that they did it differently, right? Like, the Kachuk thing kind of fell into their lap, but part of that was because they drafted and developed Jonathan Huberdeau, and he was a part of the package that came out to Calgary. So we all would love it to draft, have all these draft picks hit, and they all win championships, and we follow them from junior right up until the Cup celebration. But it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes you get these draft picks so you can then trade them for the final piece. And they still drafted Ekblad and Barkov and those guys to build around it. You have to make the smart moves to finish that off. And for Edmonton, yes, like getting McDavid and Draisaitl, that helps, but you need to have some of those other pieces around it to make it work. And they've kind of been cheeks at drafting anyway. It hasn't been great. If you look at the draft history for them, two things stand out is that one, in the McDavid era, they've drafted in the first round way more than they should have. And the second one is that they've missed on way too many of those picks. So yeah, like I understand you don't want to just completely mortgage everything. And then if and when that player leaves, then you have nothing left. But I am here to tell you, regardless of what draft picks you have, if Connor McDavid leaves in 3 years, it's going to suck anyway. So you may as well just give it a go. I don't think the 28th pick in next year's draft is going to completely save your franchise if McDavid ends up signing with the Leafs or whoever after that contract is up. So they have to go all in. I would call all my scouts back, like, guys, take a look at some like 13-year-olds or something, because we're not drafting for a while. We are going all in with this thing.
Yeah. Well said. Peter, you're the best. Thanks so much for doing this. Let people know where they can find your work, anything else you got coming up, and I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, for sure. I'm on Sportsnet 960 The Fan, a lot more than I thought I would be, filling in there over the next little while. But I also have my own podcast called Couch Potato Diary, wherever you get your podcast, also on YouTube as well. You can follow me on social media at Primetime Klein. Klein is Klein.
Perfect. And I'll be back next week doing our show like we usually do. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks again to Peter. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Take care.